Looking forward to this topic today. I've got Terrence Kwok with me from Vidyard. Got to know Terrence recently over this really amazing company up in Toronto, not too far from us, based here in Detroit. They're doing some really incredible things, and we certainly have a very aligned view of how to really run a modern sales organization. Not just the way we run our own teams, but all that we learn about all the other companies out there that both of our companies collectively work with. So our topic here today is on three strategies to improve sales productivity. I think it's a topic near and dear to a lot of people's heart. And so what we're going to do here is we'll do some quick introductions for myself, and I'll let Terrence introduce himself. We'll quickly review the agenda, and we will we'll run through our thoughts, and then there'll be certainly time at the end. So if you do have any questions along the way, please submit them, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so let's jump in. So my name is Bob Marsh. I'm founder and CEO of LevelEleven. I've spent my career in sales and sales management. This is my fourth startup. It's the first time running a company, but I've been through all different stages of a business. So early in my career was at Xerox, so I learned like the big corporate route. I was at a small startup with just a couple people where I'd go out and sell stuff and then come back and have to execute on all of it. And then prior to this, I was with a firm that we grew from 10 people to around 400 people, sold to a private equity firm, and I was able to go through all the stages of growth from early on to building teams, building layers of management, and how to scale the group. So great learning experience, and that turned itself ultimately into LevelEleven. So we're a modern sales management system, as we like to call it. So we work with clients to identify the actions or activities or behaviors or whatever you want to call them that drive to closing more business. So many salespeople get lost in day-to-day noise, and we help companies identify what are the controllable actions they need to keep them focused on. And then our software keeps that front and center for salespeople and for managers, which mostly then drives the ability for frontline managers to be great coaches, run all their one-on-ones through our software, team meetings, and most importantly, keep everybody aligned. So we've got hundreds of different teams that are using LevelEleven. These are some of the logos you see at the bottom. We're very proud to have these clients and many others. And we work with companies big and small because the problem remains across any size company that need to drive maximum productivity and focus. So with that, I'll hand it over to Terrence. So Terrence, thanks again for having us. Why don't you provide a little introduction to yourself and to Vidyard?
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much, Bob, for having me on the webinar today. So hi, everyone. I'm pretty much on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of experience when compared to Bob. So honored to be here and be presenting along with him. I've actually only been in sales development for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I was doing the whole audit gig over at one of the big 4 accounting firms. So I made a drastic change 3 years ago. I started off as a sales development rep over at Vidyard, cut my teeth in prospecting and learning how to grind through that role. And then with the growth of our company, moved into a manager role shortly after that, and have been managing our team since then. Over at Vidyard, we have both an inbound and outbound function in terms of sales development. So I've had a little bit of experience in both sides of the business. In terms of Vidyard, we're a video platform for business. In a nutshell, we help companies drive revenue and improve performance through the strategic use of online video. So over on the next slide here, you'll be able to see where we kind of help out on companies. So we largely started off as a marketing platform at first, but have since expanded. We are now moving into the sales organizations, which we'll talk a little bit about today on this webinar, using video to reach out and to work with your prospective and existing customers, as well as both on the internal communication side, so enabling employees to communicate more effectively using video, as well as support teams to help drive customer happiness using video content from both a full service and self-service standpoint. Working with a wide variety of companies. Here are some of you that we're proud to call customers, and looking forward to diving into this topic today.
Great. Thank you for the background. It certainly helps set the tone here. So this is the agenda that we're going to quickly hit on today. So first, I'll share some general perspective about what's going on in the world of modern selling. Talk about the importance of empowering sales leaders with actionable insights, which is our productivity tip number 1. The second one is how do we engage buyers with dynamic content? And this is something that Vidyard is just a bullseye expert at, and I love kind of some of the stuff that they're doing. And then lastly is how do you reinforce those critical behaviors that you really need through effective sales coaching. So to jump right into it, we've got a new generation of sellers. I mean, I think everyone understands that the buying process is very different than it's ever been before, in terms of the way people buy and the research they can do and this sort of thing. So, but if also you look at the actual salespeople, they've got a different view of how sales works than maybe some of their managers or executives do, because the world that those executives lived in when they were selling is just so radically different. So, today's sellers are used to having technology and access to data and answers and any kind of information that they need. They're also very distracted. So it's easy to get distracted in today's world when you've got mobile phones coming at, messages coming at you, social media. It's just the way we function. And I think we need to embrace this and also figure out how do you use it in a way to leverage and drive focus. The other thing is that with so much data out there, it gives us more information to help coach and direct people. And really, the modern sellers are looking for and frankly craving structure, direction, and hands-on coaching. So it's a great opportunity to finally do kind of some of the coaching and sales management development that a lot of people have always wanted to do. Also, if you think about, that there's new frontline managers, as there always are. These sales managers are vital to any company's success. I think companies oftentimes spend far too much time thinking about how do I improve, the frontline seller's experience, but really the manager is the one that makes a difference. Now, these managers are often former top successful salespeople who have the instinct to be successful, but now they're moving into a management role, and they realize that not all these salespeople are like I am. And so they're trying to figure out, how do I manage to these different styles and different approaches of salespeople? Also, many of whom need help. They need coaching, they need direction on the best way to connect with a buyer, connect with a prospect, and move something through the sales process. And so, again, things that are natural to some of these managers are unnatural to the majority of sellers. And that's the goal of the managers. How do I drive that right stuff, right behavior? So we've also got amazing technology that's available to us. And the whole idea is it allows us to do more with less. So we do more with less, we can drive productivity and output from our team. But the other part is that we're, in many cases, we think we're buying silver bullets because they say that's going to be the answer. And I think we all know there are no silver bullets. So unfortunately, many of those investments resulted in not getting the result that they wanted and can sometimes create more confusion. So the key is to make sure that you're really thinking about the buying experience, the sales process, and to not miss on the fundamentals. And too many companies are just missing on the basic fundamentals of what it takes to sell in today's world. And a lot of this is not as complicated as we often make it. So I'd like to kind of step back for a moment and kind of look at, before we get into our kind of first tip here, is to look at and contemplate how you run your own sales team, your own processes. So this is a visual of how we normally see out there. So a company goes through phase one, which is the planning. You define your sales goals, you define your expectations around whether it's activity or pipeline or whatever it might be that you expect the action side of it for your sales reps. And you do this in Excel, and it costs money because it's people's time, that sort of thing. Well, so you define those objectives. Well, then you move into, we've got to have reporting and analytics to monitor how are we doing? Are we on track with those objectives? Are we uncovering any insights that tell us we need to change something? And so this information and this data is very important. You need it, but costs money. You got to have systems to do that. The other part of it is that you want to automate steps. You want to do things faster, dial the phone faster, get content out faster, make it easier to get the right content in front of the right people, configure your quotes faster, whatever it might be. And this is largely the sales technology space that everyone's very familiar with. And that starts adding up the money you're spending on your team. But what often gets missed is the last part, which is getting people to take action. And so, this is where people, like right now, while we're on this call, you've got all your salespeople. So let's just, the payroll cost of all those people is your biggest investment that you've got. So you think about if you've got 100 salespeople, you're spending $10 to $15 million a year on all those people. So you're maybe spending $500,000 to $1 million on sales technology and everything around it. So the point is the ability to drive the actions and the behaviors of those people is your biggest opportunity to yield more impact. So performance is all about the actions of your people to get more out of them. And so that's kind of the whole concept here. So the first element of this is how do we empower sales leaders with actionable insights that they can use to help drive performance? So I like to kind of start by stepping back and saying, well, think about what's the stage of sales management that you're in. And so I don't think any company is in one stage. You can maybe generically kind of put yourself in a stage, but individual managers are at different phases. So I would kind of describe this as their stage number one is, this is probably the initial sales manager, the first time they're in a sales management job, whatever it might be, where all you're doing, I would say, kind of stuck in the dark ages, if you will. So only cares about the numbers, very carrot and stick oriented, doesn't think at all about leading indicators. So this is, again, I call it almost the dark ages kind of approach. When you have these new frontline managers come into jobs, and Terrence is a great example of that, where you're very successful individually, you become a manager, they tend not to think that way because it's a not very modern way to do it, but some managers are that way. Well, the next stage is to say, all right, how do I kind of motivate and drive behaviors in a certain way? And so then you might start seeing contests and leaderboards and spiffs and this sort of thing. The next part of it is how do I execute? How do I drive execution within my sales team? So this is companies that have very specific, defined sales processes, activity and pipeline standards. So it is very KPI focused. So I identify what I want out of my people and I manage around that in a consistent way. So it's not just about quota, it's about things like how much pipeline are you building, how many conversations are you having. It's all those leading indicators that go into it. And companies, we talk to some of them and they know precisely how many meetings it takes to generate an opportunity, and they think and operate that way. Well, the next phase is where you're very coaching driven. So you've got very consistent and structured coaching. You've got a common process, common set of questions. You're running your one-on-ones in a very consistent way. You're doing it and you're leveraging all the data that comes from your defined standards around pipeline activity. You have a very tight defined onboarding process that gets people ramped very quickly. And then the ultimate stage is where you just think in that very modern, progressive way, and all the metrics are aligned from the executive team all the way down to the reps. They're all speaking the same language. You're managing in real time. So we have customers that say, hey, I know I'm not looking at reports that tell me what happened last month. I'm looking at data in real time that tells me what's happening right now, so I can go course correct immediately. The idea is that data is driving action. It's not just data generating reports. So when you think about action, so we ran some of our own analysis across an immense list of metrics across almost 1,000 sales teams, 5,000 different metrics that people were using, and found that these are the most common actions that people are managing around. And so what you've got here is broken out into these different roles or functions called sales development and AEs, field sales, and account management. So these are the ones that one covered. And so what always amazes me and many people is that you would have thought there would have been some very unique kind of metrics that no one would ever thought of before. But really what this report revealed to us is you have to call people, you have to talk to people, you have to build pipeline, and you have to drive pipeline close to closure. So this is what I mean by the fundamentals, is that you can't forget the fundamentals, and far too many companies get stuck in, I've got to redo my Salesforce org, or I need to get this other technology. You don't. Right now, salespeople are doing actions that may not get you to your number, and don't forget on those fundamentals. So our sales KPI report is available to anybody. We also help companies figure this stuff out, but as mentioned here, it's not. You don't want to make it overly complicated. And so there's an example of how one of the things that LevelEleven does when you identify those metrics that you want to use, but it helps visualize it for a manager. And so up here, this where you see CNN, NBM, these are abbreviations. So in this example screenshot, this client is using Connects, which is connecting with someone on the phone, a new business meeting, pipeline, and closed business. And so, through our pacing algorithms, you can have a visual representation of, hey, what's going well, which is everything in green, and blue, I'm on track. If I'm behind pace, you see a lot of red over here. So the idea is I can clearly see what's going well, where do I need help, and I can go, again, manage in real time. I'm not looking at the data from a month ago. I'm looking at the data right now to get my team focused. So again, this can be different for every company. If you're working with really progressive companies, maybe those that are using systems like Vidyard or others, it's important to think about what are those most important metrics? What are the most important ways to get in front of people And there's many progressive ways to do that, which I think lends nicely into some of the great ideas that that Vidyard is doing to kind of engage prospects at the front end of the process. So with that, Terrence, I'll hand this over to you.
Alrighty, thanks, Bob. It's so funny, like looking at that progression, the different stages of sales management. I was able to plot like different months of my career in the sales development manager role against those five buckets, and I can only imagine what would have happened if I started from stage 4, stage 5 at the beginning and not stumbled around with carrots and sticks so early on. But yeah, no, it's really cool and eye-opening to see that. So yeah, hi everyone. Just want to talk a little bit about engaging prospects with dynamic content, specifically around video. I think the idea here is kind of leading into what Bob was just saying, right? Like getting back to the fundamentals. What are the actions that you can drive that you need to monitor your team to be doing and drive them to take action around the things that matter the most. And like Bob said, a lot of things that matter at the end of the day is just getting into conversations, having more meetings, and talking to more prospective customers. And that's exactly what we try to do in what I think is maybe a little bit more of a unique way. So if we pop over to the next slide here, we can talk a little about engaging prospects with video and how this actually gets you into more meetings and how this gets you into more conversations. So today, 20 billion videos are being viewed online every single day across Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, YouTube, etc. So people are craving video content, and that is mostly in their consumer lives, but it's starting to bleed into the enterprise. So people who are potential buyers or who are sellers, they also want to see video during that entire buyer's journey. But on the other hand, as probably all of us know and have been in sales, there's this ability to automate and quote unquote personalize your emails at scale. And this is resulting in flooded inboxes. I think one thing Bob mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, he was talking about how sellers are distracted, our buyers are distracted as well. There are so many different things that they could possibly be doing at any given moment. Your emails are getting lost, and that's because there's 5,000 other sales development reps or sales reps trying to contact the same people that you're trying to reach every single day, and they can do so with the click of a button. So our idea here at Vidyard and what we're seeing people start moving towards is using more dynamic content to not only get the attention of your buyer, but also get you into more conversations to ultimately drive more revenue for your companies. So the idea here is not to replace your existing communication channels with video, but instead using video, specifically personal video content, to enhance the cadence that you're following today, whether it's from a prospecting standpoint or from an active deal cycle standpoint. So if you're going to send off an email, instead of sending the email with just text, include that same text, but include a personal video. And I think why this is important and what I really like to talk about is that by humanizing the sales process, we're kind of getting back to those fundamentals, right? Before with field sales, people will go door to door. If you ask a sales rep, like, do you prefer an in-person meeting or a meeting on the phone? Most of them are going to say an in-person meeting. But that's not possible. That's not scalable. So we moved inside, we're on the phone, and we're talking to our prospects. But it's hard to get those conversations started all the time. So instead, and then on the prospecting side, we're kind of stuck in this text-based world, right? So using video and putting the sellers that you hired front and center in front of their prospects again, and enabling them to sell with their personality and the skills that you hired them for, really humanizes that process, shows a little bit of vulnerability from your reps, and ultimately what we're finding is that by including video into your prospecting efforts, you're going to get into 3 times more meetings, which at the end of the day is, like Bob said, those are the fundamentals of sales, and that's what's going to help you close more business. So that's a little bit from the prospecting side. Let's talk about the active sales cycles. How do you get your reps using video in their sales cycle effectively? So if you ask any account executive today, how many of them would raise their hands if you painted the following scenario? You just got off an amazing discovery call, your champion's fired up, they're ready to buy. All they have to do is go tell their boss or tell the other people internally about your product, get them bought in, and then schedule the next call to get things wrapped up, right? That happens all the time. You get off a discovery call, you're fired up, you're putting that into your commit, and you're ready to go. The problem is, like many sales reps experience today, a week later, that prospect goes dark on you. They're no longer returning your calls. You have that amazing discovery call, and now they seem to be no longer interested. And then, if, you know, a couple months of chasing them, they finally let you know, like, no, this is no longer a priority. And I think it's weird because we expect our buyers and our champions to be able to sell our products internally to their stakeholders after one discovery call, when your sales reps have gone through months and months of training, onboarding, and have learned your value proposition, right? So using video in your deal cycles really helps you avoid that broken telephone, and it enables you to control the message. So instead of sending your champion off to the team to sell your products internally, instead you can now be selling that product directly to them through the use of video, enabling your champion to take that video, a personal video message, and share it across the team and across the different stakeholders, ultimately helping you get into that next meeting, into that next call with all the stakeholders that need to be involved in the deal. And what's interesting with video specifically, and this is where it comes down to insights and really about spending time on what matters, is video enables you to track, you know, not only who's watching the video, but how long are they engaged. So if you've got 10 deals in your pipeline, which are the ones that you want to be spending time on that are actually going to get you closed business, right? The buyers that are most engaged with your video content are going to be the people that you want to triple down your efforts on and to spend most of your time focused on. Whereas the buyers that are not watching the video content that you're sharing, maybe those are the deals that you deprioritize for this quarter and you start chasing the next quarter. But that's kind of it with dynamic content, specifically video. It's all about humanizing sales, putting your sales reps front and center, speaking directly to your prospective customer as if they were there next to you, and ultimately getting yourself into more meetings so that you can focus on what matters, which is selling.
That's great. So it's such an interesting kind of new approach to take, and I know that our team has kind of toyed around with it a little bit, and it's an excellent way to stand out, and the ability to empower your reps to think about this is pretty powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's one of those things, like, you mentioned, Bud, like your team's starting to dabble with it. It's not one of those things you want to just like throw out to your team and be like, hey, start recording video. It's not easy, right? Oftentimes I hear managers being like, my team's a little bit nervous to record a video. They're not comfortable doing this. And it's the same thing that, like, with the cold call. If a rep told you, I don't want to make cold calls, usually the answer is like, well, why not? Like, how can we coach you through it? It's going to take a little bit of practice before you get comfortable. And it's the same thing with video. So I believe kind of our next topic is around coaching. And what's interesting with video is that because you're sitting in front of your screen recording videos all day long, you're in a way, practicing your pitch and becoming pitch perfect, which then enables the managers to, like, reinforce those key behaviors during the sales coaching process.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, hey, we as a seller, you've got to learn how to be presentable and be articulate in the whole thing. So anyway, it's important. So good. Well, thank you. We'll come back with questions here at the end. So let's see. So next is talking about how do we really reinforce those key behaviors using sales coaching. So I'd like to start by kind of just looking at some statistics that are kind of amazing. So first of all, that it's clear we found is that companies generate all this data that is all really helpful and important to pay attention to, but really struggle on how do you translate that into what actions people should take. So I would think that say someone's using video might be like, hey, there's an alerts coming at me to say somebody's watching your video. That's important. That's actionable. But on the other side of it, many companies have all these metrics that are simply not actionable. So it's a data point, but I don't know what I can really do with that information or what action to take. And so in fact, 83% of all the metrics that companies look at are simply not actionable. Actionable defined as if you got that data point in front of a seller, what could they do right now to change their behavior, change their actions, and be able to influence it immediately? So that's the first thing. The other one is, coaching is implied, it comes from the manager. So the manager is the one who is the one delivering the coaching day to day and needs to be in the middle of what's actually going on. But unfortunately, 73% of managers receive no training on how to be a coach, or little training or no coaching at all. And so I think that often the assumption is you're a really good seller. If you just manage other sellers, you're going to be able to kind of everything that is great about you, you're going to make everyone else great too. And it just simply doesn't work that way. So this is kind of where the whole idea of how do you motivate action behaviors from managers is so important. So the other part is that the missing ingredient to help a manager be successful is all about coaching around the behaviors that lead to results. Like, we already know that salespeople are motivated to close business, and sometimes it might not feel that way, but their comp is based on that. I mean, that's what they want to accomplish. But the challenge they have is help teach me how to do it. And that can be everything from, here's the behaviors or actions you need to take that will make sure you get there. So for example, it might be you got to prospect more, or you got to have more, figure out a way to get in more conversations. You got to figure out a way to get some more VPs, and that's coaching to help people see the insights and data around that, but then also coaching on how to do it. If it's a system like like Terrence was just talking about the video, it's, well, I know you're uncomfortable, but that's kind of part of being in sales, and let's teach you and practice this together. Something that you need to do that's going to lead to you seeing more results. So this is really what that coaching is all about. So in particular, we tend to think a lot about coaching as a way to reinforce desired behavior. So as you critically define, what are the metrics that you want to manage your team around? And this just goes back to the same example. If it's, say, conversations, new business meetings, pipeline, new business, and every company is going to be different, is to say, let's make sure you're looking at this data over and over again. So in this example, I can say, here's where I stand in the current period, say the current week, but here's what happened last week, here's what happened the last 4 weeks, here's what's happened year to date. And so this is an example of creating a good, consistent management rhythm around what are the scorecards that we're going to manage people around, and then ensure that it's coming back to you on a consistent basis and you're coaching and talking about it. So that's kind of where the coaching part of at least what LevelEleven does is all about, but there's so many more parts of coaching that you need to do, which is some of the stuff that Terrence touched on as well. So quickly to recap, and then we'll open it up for questions. First of all, don't miss on the fundamentals. Don't forget that action is what it's all about, and all the reports and data and everything that you can get at, and even in many cases, sales technology, doesn't make up for action. You need people to do things that are going to really move the needle. Second is to really ponder and think about what stage of sales management is your team in, or your different managers, and figure out, how do I progress people through the stages? It's tough to go from stage 1 to stage 5. You're going to work through some of these phases, and that's okay. Third is to really define what are those critical actions that are going to lead to revenue or whatever the result might be. If you're an SDR team, the result would be setting opportunities. If you're an AE team, it's turning opportunities into pipeline and towards closure. If you're an account management or support team, it's all about, how do I retain and grow my customer base? So, but really identify the actions, behaviors, whatever they want to call them, that lead to the results that people want, and kind of help backtrack that through the process. Next is create a buying process that engages prospects with content. So this is a lot of the stuff that Terrence talked about. I love the visual on the screen of with a little whiteboard and with a person's name. So it is a great way to engage someone in a very unique way, instead of just banging on the phones all the time and sending more templated emails, or even the way Terrence put it in quotations mark, personalized. Like, people don't take this seriously enough. So it's all part of good solid selling. And then lastly, just reinforce the things that you want to see over and over and over again with good, solid, consistent coaching. So that's all we have for today in terms of the slides that we put together. But with that, I think we will open it up for questions. So actually, there's one that popped up here. But Terrence, I was just thinking about this earlier. I've read so much about how communication and how you communicate with people. And, I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but it's some alarming number is nonverbal communication, right? So in the old days where everything was about, when you're in person, we learned, early in my sales career, we learned very carefully things like how do you dress and posture and how you walk into a room and your voice inflection and all this kind of stuff, that you're looking people in the eye, like shaking with a firm handshake, like all this kind of stuff that was the nonverbal. And I mean, the numbers are something alarming, like 80% of all communication is nonverbal. So in a modern environment, when so much is over the phone and over email, you're missing 80% of communication. It seems like you guys helped fill the gap a little bit because you had a video element to it, but talk to this topic. I think it's an important one, just communicating one person to another.
Yeah, definitely. I also had that those numbers on a slide somewhere else where I've talked about this in the past. Like, it's something like 80%
Sure.
body language, 10% is like the tone of your voice, and then 10% is the words you're actually saying or something along those lines. But yeah, no, I think like adding video really enables you to kind of show the prospect, you know, who you are, and communicate them and actually show the enthusiasm, right? Like a lot of salespeople talk about, you know, I want to sell a product that I'm actually passionate about, but that passion is really hard to let that passion is really hard to show in a text-based email. So kind of by using video in your prospecting and in your deal cycles, you can now connect with your potential buyer in a much more unique way, and also show them that like you believe what you're saying, right? Like you're not just sitting back and firing off templated emails, but you're actually excited and enthusiastic about understanding their needs and helping them accomplish their goals with whatever product you're selling. So yeah, like I video is a great way to do that. It's also one of the most challenging things to work on when you first move into this world of video selling. Most of our reps, most of my team before Vidyard, like their exposure to sales would have just been on the phone, right? So you can have your feet up on the desk and be leaning back and having a conversation with somebody. No one's going to know, but now you got to sit up straight, like you said. You have to smile. You have to make eye contact. In the case of video, you know, looking directly at the camera instead of looking down at your face or looking above or elsewhere. That's a new element that takes a little bit of practice and coaching to be effective at and get your team effective at.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So let's see. So questions from the audience. So let's see. How can LevelEleven help me get from stage 1 to stage 5 of sales management? And Terrence, you commented this a little bit earlier, so feel free to add anything. So in particular, I think that the first step is just defining kind of the phases a bit. And so, you know, it's not perfect, but, you know, figure out what are the different stages of management that you're in. I mean, the way that we do this is, you know, we first want to understand at the executive level, like what type of organization do you want to build first? So, you know, where do you want to be is important. And then from there, the important part is to work with managers to understand what are the important measures or metrics or actions that you want to get your sellers to be taking. And so when companies come to the realization that you know, maybe they're making things too complicated and they need to say, how do I reverse engineer my sales process? You know, say, hey, if I want to close this much business, you know, let me backtrack that. Based on an average deal size, it's this many individual wins. In order to get that many wins, here's how many proposals I have to send. In order to send that many proposals, here's how many opportunities I need to identify. If I want to identify that many opportunities, how many new business meetings do I need to have? How much prospecting do I need to do? And so that is not a complicated process, but many companies, again, get lost in the day-to-day noise and don't think about the basics of that. And so, so the first is if you can get a management team to see and buy into that, knowing there's, of course, nuances, that's key. So from there, then you can kind of work with managers because they'll understand that, and then you can enable them with technology and data and scorecards and coaching capabilities that allow them to move through that process. So that's the main way that we do it. So let's see, Terrence, I got a question for you here. So how long should a typical video be in order to keep the prospect engaged the whole time? Is there a call to action? And then second part of that question, is there a call to action?
Yeah, so video length is something worth considering, and it changes depending on what part of the sales cycle the prospective customer is in. What we found through our data was initial touch. So if you have not made contact, you've not had a scheduled meeting with the prospect, you should be keeping your videos 60 seconds or less, right? People are incredibly distracted in this Snapchat world where they could barely, you could barely keep their attention for 10 seconds. So in a sales context, keeping your prospecting videos to be less than 60 seconds will be best before you connect with them. From a call to action in those prospecting videos, there's one or two ways you can do it. The first way is you leave the call to action in your email, because at the end of the day, that's where the video is being delivered through. So you're still asking for the meeting or sticking to best practices. The second way is include your calendar at the end of your video. So with the video platform like Vidyard, you're able to embed, your calendar like Calendly or Chili Piper or HubSpot's calendar directly within the player. So what you're doing is you're helping them continue through that customer journey. So they watch that video. It, instead of fading to black, it fades to the ability for them to book a meeting directly with you then and there. When you get into the deal cycle, most of our account executives are using video to recap calls. So maybe going through a sponsor letter, but in video form, or walking through a proposal. At that point, depending on how engaged your buyer is, you can go a bit longer with your video. A recap video might be 90 seconds in length. A proposal walkthrough might be anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, we've toyed around a little bit with those kind of closer to the proposal ones. It's not like walking through the proposal, but more of a personalized, so the prospect video may be a high-level pitch demo, but then this one is more of a personalized to explain how it works for that team, and we've seen that work really well. So right, probably depends on which phase of the sales process you're in.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing with the proposal specifically is, one, instead of having that deck forwarded around the organization where a bunch of people read it with no context, you now add that context when that email does get forwarded to the people who have to sign the deals or get involved in the buying process. They hear directly from you of why they should care about whatever they're seeing in front of them. Right.
Well, context, and the other thing you mentioned earlier is enthusiasm. So you can't communicate enthusiasm and passion and even the idea of being articulate and sounding confident makes other people feel better too. So that's all, again, that goes back to that communication style side of things that you can really drive through video that you can't accomplish in an email or a presentation.
Precisely.
All right, let's see. So another question I have here is, looks like this one's for me. So data is great for actionable insights. How do you get managers engaged enough to want to coach? So that's an interesting one. So definitely, I mean, the key is that you want to make sure that the data that you're generating or that you're keeping front and center is aligned. Like the managers understand the metrics and they believe that those are the ones to manage performance, that the reps believe them and understand them. So you've got to have that alignment. So the way that you get managers engaged, and we see this all the time, is they believe it. So I was talking earlier about when you move a frontline manager and they're a successful seller and they become a manager, is they oftentimes don't realize or understand that other people don't understand what seems so natural to them. So for example, they feel like, well, I'm just going out and I figure out how to close deals. Well, they haven't realized that what's natural to them is they're always prospecting, they're always having new business meetings, they're always building pipeline because they have some sense about them that they know when they don't have enough. And so the ability to help them kind of break down what process did they go through, and realizing that I've got to create pipeline, I've got to create qualified pipeline, I've got to get proposals out so I have I have enough pipeline coverage, and I've got to hit my quota, and that's my number. So if managers understand that, and conceptually they likely will, then suddenly when you put data in front of them to say, okay, here's how each team member is performing on those important metrics, and the salespeople are looking at those same metrics, then the managers, now you're arming them with data to help coach around. And this helps offset the concern that many have is, well, I don't want to be a micromanager. So you don't have to be a micromanager, but you do have to use data to make good decisions. So that's kind of where this comes in, and managers therefore embrace it because they know, absent being armed with this information, they don't really know what to coach around. They end up just doing one-on-ones and asking what's going to close this month, which goes back to the initial issue of that's not really that helpful to people. Let's see, Terrence, anything to add on that one? I think you're a pretty data-driven manager yourself.
Yeah, it's funny with data. It's almost like a little bit overwhelming, and I don't know, my experience with using data, I guess, to manage the team, it's been challenging because sometimes I get so sucked into the data and then I almost missed some of the context of the art of sales, right? And then also adding in the layer of context of what one rep might be doing and might say is working well. When you actually dive in, you're seeing another thing, and how do you reconcile that? Has always been a challenge for me as a manager. So it's cool to see ways that some of that subjectivity can get pulled out. You can kind of remove that subjectivity, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. So one other question here that I think is directed at you is, so we send an intro video to each internet lead. They are not personalized to the individual seller. how important is it that these videos use the consumer's name? Also, where's the line? When do we stop sending personalized videos?
Yeah, so I think you got to take into the context of the lead that you're trying to reach, right? So if it is an inbound lead, that canned video could be more than okay. Like it's they've already showed some sort of intent. You don't need to be spending and prioritizing your time reaching out to them with a personal video unless that's the customer experience that your company wants to provide. Where we spend a lot of time with our personalized videos is specifically with our outbound leads, with the people that have not shown any intent on purchasing, because it's a good way to capture attention and kick off an initial sales conversation. In our cadence, we send video twice. So it's our first email that goes out with a video, and then our third email will go out with a video. So that's 2 of our 5 emails will contain video. So we're not sending it out on every single time. You need to figure out what works. First time the video didn't work, then try text next.
Okay, got it. Cool. All right, I did actually get one more here. Is so this one's for LevelEleven here. So what sort of competitions do you use with your team to reinforce positive behavior? So yeah, it really varies. I mean, so it depends on the role and the function and where things stand. I mean, so the way we look at it is you identify your critical metrics or behaviors you want to drive. So if it's an SDR team, maybe that's more activity that drives to opportunities. And so in that case, the metrics for that group might be things like dials, email sent, could be, prospecting video email sent, number of actually live conversations, number of SQLs generated. So the way you would look at it is say, okay, within those critical metrics for that team, if we're noticing that, hey, the team is collectively falling behind on live connects as an example, then you might run a competition around who can get the most live connects by the end of the day or the end of the week. Or you might say, you know what, I think the reason we don't have enough live connects, we need to dial more. So you'd run something around there. So if you're an inside sales team or a sales team, your metrics might be different because it's more about taking created opportunities and driving to close. So, for that group, it might be more about how do you move opportunity, get more opportunities to move from one stage to the next stage and run some competitions around that just to advance deals forward. So that's the first step when you think about competition, is to say, what behavior do I need to change to help because I'm falling behind? That's one way to use competitions. The other one is, or contests, if you will. The other one is if you have some special initiatives. So, for example, we just launched a new product. So, whoever has the most conversations about this new product, that's going to go into a contest, or whoever closes the most deals with this new product included, that sort of thing. So again, it comes down to special initiatives versus trying to drive a KPI. That's about how do you reinforce that positive behavior within the team. So that's all we have for today. Thank you, everybody, for your time. This is very well attended. And so we're going to wrap up here. I appreciate your time and attention to talking about a very important topic. Anybody, we're fully available, Terrence or myself. I think we shared our Twitter handles earlier, so feel free to reach out to either of us. And I think both of our companies are respectively happy to answer any other individual questions for you as well. So thanks again, happy selling, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bob.